Reinvention means different things to different people. And over the last 2 years I've been working on reinventing my career, and being over 50 as well hasn't been as straightforward as one would hope. And also being 50, which is a big number, that comes with its own set of challenges. However, here's something that I've experienced about reinvention that most content in this space doesn't cover, or at least I may have just simply missed. Don't get me wrong, I love a good highlight reel just like the next person, be that on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and who doesn't, to be fair. They're really, really great to see and to be inspired by as well. You know, the reels where someone has got it all together, they figured it out and they're completely smashing their goals. For me, I'm not quite there yet. I would probably candidly say that I'm nowhere near. For me, I haven't seen a highlight reel that includes all the twists, the turns, the pivots, the late nights, the early mornings, the sleep-deprived, desperate times where the struggle is real. As in the elements before the highlight reel, if you will. In my experience, those times look really busy, uncertain, and really squishy in certain places. However, I am super clear than I've ever been in recent times. Some weeks are genuinely brilliant. Things just slot into place like it's all been scripted, and things work like clockwork. Other weeks are harder than the corporate job ever was, kinda like pulling teeth with a wooden spork. That said, there is a distinct difference for me. Every single day, for me when it comes to my work, is a choice. It's not a forced march or a drudge that you feel when you really don't like what you're doing. This is a deliberate, conscious, intentional, freely made choice to keep going in the direction that you have chosen, at the pace that you dictate. I'd say right now I'm mid-climb, and if you've been following the 51st Chapter series from the beginning, this could be where you are right now, or maybe you're about to head into that stage. You've cleared the start, you've heard the starting pistol go, and you've headed off, and you're well on your way. But you're not at that triumphant highlight reel euphoric high just yet. Instantly, for me, I'm not quite sure what that looks like, but I'm sure we can explore that together when we arrive there, right? You're in the middle, just like I am, doing the work, figuring it out, moving and shifting with the times, building something real that's yours, pulling in all the elements that you can from your adjacencies. If you're in the middle, then this episode I've created is for you. If you're not, do stick around though, as this episode may bring some insights and watch outs for when you hit that phase. As well as all of that, and more importantly, I also want to show you that you're not alone, that you're not by yourself. And that is absolutely critical when you're in this middle phase. So I hope you've got a cup of something good to hand. Well, you know how it goes. There are things about restarting after 50 that no one, I believe, puts into their content. Maybe it's not dramatic enough. It certainly doesn't make for a great thumbnail or clickbait. Not that I'm a fan of clickbait at all. The thing is, though, it doesn't make them less true. Let me share a few that I've observed over the last couple of years with you. The income is real, but it's inconsistent in the early days. It's not absent, but it's just a little bit hit and miss. If you've done the runway work from episode 4, you'll discover those inconsistencies in a way where employment never was. A brilliant month followed by a quieter one. You begin to live in that feast and famine world that every independent professional knows. You learn to plan for it rather than panic about it. But nobody tells you it's a really strange feeling after decades of a predictable, regular salary. Also, the freedom itself is real, but it requires a discipline that employment never really asked for. When no one's telling you what to do today, you have to decide. Every day, you have to decide what matters, what can wait, what can be built now, what can be built later on. That self-direction really is exhilarating at times. It's also more demanding than any manager that I have ever had. The discipline of building something independently is a completely different muscle entirely, and it takes time to develop that muscle. Also, thirdly, small wins hit completely differently. The first invoice that you raise independently, the first client that comes back for a second project, that first piece of content that resonates with someone that you've never met and makes them feel less alone. These are objectively smaller than big corporate milestones, but they land much harder and much different, because every one of them is yours. You made it. Nobody signed that off. Nobody had to approve it. It exists because you chose to build it. Fourthly, you miss things that you didn't expect to miss. For example, the structure, the automatic rhythm of a working week that someone else has designed, colleagues and friends, the specific kind of banter that only happens in an office environment. These are all real. Acknowledging them doesn't mean that you want to go back. It perhaps just means that you're a human being who's built relationships over 2 or 3 decades and now has a different kind of day. But those things can be true. It just takes a little bit of extra effort to keep in touch with those people. Conversely, you don't miss things that you expected to miss. For example, the salary. I expected to miss it a lot more than I actually did. The status, it's gone faster than I actually thought. The feeling of being inside a structure that told me who I was. It turns out I was already figuring that out on my own. I didn't need a structure for that. The identity shift takes longer than the practical shift. You can update your LinkedIn profile in the best part of 5 minutes flat. Rebuilding your sense of who you are without the corporate scaffolding takes considerably longer. There'll be moments in your first year where the old identity pulls at you, where the muscle memory of corporate life activates and you find yourself performing a version of yourself that no longer exists. The new identity arrives a piece at a time, and I don't think that that's a problem per se, but it's just how it works. And knowing that that's the case, you can then be prepared for it. So where am I at in all of this? Well, here's the candid version, the real one, not the one that I'd put in a case study, because that's what the 51st chapter series has all been about, showing you exactly where I'm at in all of this. You may recall that my measure of success in my business is keeping my kids in Wi-Fi. And for now, they've got Wi-Fi until probably the end of the year. Norf 2.0 celebrated 2 years of being in business back in April 2026, and I'm insanely pleased about that fact. I've had wonderful opportunities to work with some superb clients, almost 30 since rebooting True North. My first client felt like proof. The latest one feels like I'm really in a groove. The other thing that I should say is that I've only logged 1 hour of helicopter flight time so far, on my way to realizing a childhood dream of gaining my private pilot's license for helicopters. And the reason for that is simply cash has been quite tight. However, that deferred dream from episode 3 is no longer deferred, and I'll be booking some more time later on this year, and I'll keep you posted on my progress. But here's the part that I really wanted to be straight with you about. In this middle bit, it can be up and down, and since December 2025, things looked a little bit bleak from a work perspective, and candidly, it was getting on for squeaky butt time. My income had dropped, I could no longer see immediate work on the horizon, and self-doubt kicked in pretty hard. I want to call it out because if I only show you the milestones and the high times, I'd be doing the same thing as every other piece of Reinvention content does, editing out the messy middle bit. The middle is where the work actually happens. Not the dramatic beginning, not the triumphant end, but right here, building something, figuring it out. Some days are clearer than others, like I've mentioned, but every day is a choice, and it's a choice that I'm really glad that I've made. Which brings me quite nicely onto where I am now, because although I'm telling you that I'm mid-climb, and this is what it kind of looks like in general, let me tell you what mine looks like specifically. So let me start with my first client. They are a UK-based company. I met with the CEO a number of times. We had coffee, we had lunch, and I asked them a question about what they did, and they really do some phenomenal work. And I said, why haven't I seen your work out on social media? It feels like you're the world's best kept secret. And sure enough, he turned around and said, actually, I think that you're right. We are the world's best kept secret. Is this something that you could do to change that? Cut a very long story short, I put a proposal together, a value-based proposal together, offered it to them, and they came back and said, we would love to work with you, and I did a 6-month stint with them. And that first invoice that came through that was paid, honestly, the word euphoria, that was the dictionary definition of the word euphoria. This was something that I'd seen, it was a gap, it was something I built for them, and it wasn't just about a transaction, it was very much a dialogue. And it was something that I felt that I could offer real value into them, into their teams, and into their business. And I will never ever forget that first client. And I'm sure you're exactly the same. I'd love to hear kind of what you did with your first client and what impact you made for your first client. Do let me know in the comments. That moment, your first client comes in and decides to sign on the line. Whatever your moment is, nobody can tell you when in advance that moment will happen. It arrives when it arrives. And when it does, it will be worth every single difficult week that came before it. I also want to share with you some other people who know exactly what I'm talking about. But before I do, I want to mention something that we all struggle with. And irrespective of where you are in your journey, I think we all hit this. And it's probably one of the hardest things to say out loud, particularly when you're 2 years in or you're 6 months in and you're starting to get some regular income coming through. But it is one of the hardest things to say out loud. And that is imposter syndrome. You expect imposter syndrome to appear at the beginning. When you leave employment and set up independently, the imposter syndrome should appear in the very early days, and that makes sense. You have no track record as an independent, you have no reviews, no case studies, no proof of concept. The doubt at the beginning is indeed logical. The imposter syndrome that I'm talking about is the one that shows up mid-climb, where you are in the middle of making this thing all happen. When you do have results, when you do have clients, when the content is landing and the audience is growing, and the evidence is actually there, but you still hear that voice. Who are you to be doing this? Someone's going to find out who you are and the fact that you don't know what you're doing. The last one worked, but the next one, will it? You just got lucky. That voice in the middle of hard evidence that directly contradicts it. All of that said, here's something that I've learned about that voice mid-climb. It gets loudest when you try something new, when you step outside of the format or platform or approach that's already working and you're attempting to do something that you've never done before. A new content format, a new income stream, a different kind of client, a piece of work that you've never done independently before. You've only ever done it inside a corporate structure where you've got a big safety net. Every new thing resets the imposter syndrome, even when the old things are working. Because the new things have no evidence just yet. And in the absence of evidence, doubt happens to fill that space. If you've been following the series for any considerable amount of time, you know that one of my favourite words beginning with R is the word reframe. So here's a reframe that I want to offer to you, because I've had to offer it to myself on repeated occasions. The imposter syndrome you feel mid-climb is not evidence that you don't belong here. It's evidence that you're still growing and you're moving in the right direction. The moment it disappears completely, the moment you stop feeling the fear of a new thing, is the moment that you've stopped reaching for anything outside of your comfort zone. The imposter syndrome is uncomfortable. It really, really is. But its presence means that you're still moving forwards, you're still extending, you're still stretching towards something that you've never done before. You're learning, you're moving into those adjacencies where those adjacencies will become the new norm. That isn't a problem. That is the job. And the only thing that I have found that actually quiets it, not silences it because it never ever goes away, but quiets it, is just doing the thing anyway and ignoring it. Publishing the video, sending the pitch, taking the brief, starting the content format that scares you. Not because the fear goes away beforehand, but because it goes partially, temporarily, if you will, afterwards. And the next time it gets quieter, and the time after that it gets quieter still, and so on and so forth. In my experience, imposter syndrome doesn't get beaten. If you found a way to beat it, please do let me know in the comments. But in my experience, imposter syndrome doesn't get beaten. But it's something you have to keep telling to get back into its box and to keep quiet when it appears and tries to derail you. So just a note on the stories, I want to be clear about the 3 stories that I want to share with you. I know all 3 of these individuals and have seen what they've done. They all used to work for employers, but now they're doing something on their own. All of these stories are just summaries, but I am going to spend a little bit of time going into a greater element of detail on something that I'm going to be launching fairly soon called the 51st Chapter Podcast, Gone Solo. And the premise of the 51st Chapter podcast is simply to spend time with people who have gone from full-time employment to freelance work, or full-time employment to being a business owner. Some of these people will be underneath the age of 40, others will be over the age of 50, a little bit like I am. And just unpacking their experiences, having gone from full-time employment to then starting something on their own. So I cannot wait to launch that series with you. I will let you know in due course when it's going to happen, but it is something that I am preparing, and as soon as I've got a few episodes ready, I will let you know so you can dig into those and you can hopefully glean some really valuable insights from the people who have gone from full-time to freelance or full-time to being a business owner. That will be on the 51st Chapter podcast, Gone Solo, coming soon. Whilst in college, Les studied journalism in print and broadcast. He then transitioned into technology, hardware sales and sales management, where he managed service sales at a global print company for 20 years. At which point he was recruited into sales enablement for another 6 years within that large global print company, spending a total of 26 years there. After which, Les needed a slightly different challenge and used his skills in sales and sales management to become a BDM or business development manager for a fintech company for about a year. He then moved into a cybersecurity software company as a sales enablement manager for 3 years. At the time of putting this together, Les is now 63 and is co-founder working with his wife and daughter in their family business called Progress Design Spaces. They build turnkey custom backyard offices and leisure studios, and they're headquartered in Greensboro, North Carolina in the US. Before Jo found her niche in B2B marketing, she worked in project management, client services, sales, and business operations across a variety of industries, from utilities to construction to professional services and healthcare communications. Each role taught her something different. However, together, they gave her a broad understanding of how businesses work, how to build strong relationships, and how to adapt quickly to new challenges. Those experiences still shape the way she works today. For over 15 years, Jo built her career in B2B marketing, helping technology businesses grow through smart, commercially focused marketing. She loved working closely with sales teams, building campaigns that made a real difference, and finding creative ways to connect with customers and partners. Along the way, she led regional marketing across the UK and Northern Europe, managed significant budgets, and developed strategies that supported business growth. However, when redundancy came along, it gave Jo the chance to stop and think about what she really wanted to do next. Instead of jumping back into another corporate role, Jo decided to back herself and build something of her own. Now, Jo works independently with businesses that need experienced marketing support without hiring a full-time marketing lead. Starting her own business has been a big change, but it's also reminded Jo why she got into marketing in the first place. Jo is a problem solver, relationship builder, and loves helping good businesses tell their story to grow with confidence. At the time of putting this together, Jo is currently 54, and although very challenging, it's given her a new lease of life. James left school with just 1 A-level because he caught the bug for music and he hated maths and economics. He also wanted to be a fighter pilot from the age of 7, but failed the medical at 17. So he finished school, saved up, and went to drum school in New York for a year. When he got back, he worked at a Christian music store where he met his wife. James began teaching drums full-time at schools as well as privately. He moved to Guildford in Surrey and became head of drums at the Academy of Contemporary Music. 3 years later, Zildjian, the cymbal manufacturer, headhunted him for a role of International Artist Relations Manager. He worked there for 3 years until the fateful times of 9/11, which led to his redundancy. He and his family moved to South Africa, where he set up a small teaching studio that became a recording studio. James learned everything he needed to know how to record and record well. He also played drums with a number of high-profile artists in South Africa, as well as some pretty big festivals. After 9 years, he and his family returned to the UK, to which he converted his parents' 19th century coach house into a studio and set himself up as a drummer stroke engineer, recording as well as playing. James and his family moved to the US for 3 years on an adventure that he's still not sure whether it was the right way to go. However, that step gave James a complete change of direction. James was employed as a senior leader of a church for 7 years before now retooling again as a future architect, or a coach in other words. At the time of telling you this story, James is currently 55 and has pivoted again. 3 stories, different ages, different industries, different starting points, and all the same mid-climb. Here's what I noticed when I looked at my own experience and the experiences of the people that I've just shared the summary with, who are all doing this thing honestly. All of our directions are clearer than the path. Everyone mid-climb knows where they're going. The destination isn't the uncertainty. The specific route, which client, which content piece, which decision week, that's where the uncertainty lives. And all that's fine. The direction is enough. I don't believe you need to see the whole map at once. You just need to see it in certain sections. And you just need to see what your next few steps are. The work is consistently more meaningful with all of these and with myself as well. Not always more enjoyable, not always easier, but certainly much more meaningful and much more valuable. The specific quality of effort that comes from working on something that belongs to you, something where every decision is yours and every result lands differently, is unlike anything I think full-time employment produces. Even the hard days have a different quality to them. I've also discovered this as well, that the regret runs in one direction. I've spoken to nobody mid-climb who wishes that they hadn't started. Not a single person. And I've spoken to plenty of people who wish they'd started sooner. I think the regret, when it exists, runs towards the time before the decision was made, not towards the decision to do something on your own itself. I think also it gets more real as you go forwards, and not less real. The beginning of Reinvention has a specific quality of unreality to it. You're in the gap in between the old chapter and the new chapter, and nothing quite feels solid yet. The mid-climb is different. The work is tangible, the results are visible, the identity is settling. The further you go into it, the more real I think it becomes, not less real. That reality, I think, is what the beginning can't give you. You have to build your way to it. Okay, right, it's time to get practical, because this episode isn't just about me talking about mid-climb as well as the summaries of 3 other people's stories mid-climb. This is about yours as well. And here's the exercise. I suppose you could call it the Progress Audit. And it's deceptively simple, like everything that I've designed in the 51st chapter, which, of course, is the same thing that I've said about everything else in this series. Because the simple ones tend to be the ones that most people skip or skip over or don't spend enough time on. So I would encourage you, don't skip this one. Do invest a little bit of time in this one. Why? This is something that I discovered yesterday whilst preparing to shoot this video. Sometimes we need to be reminded of how far we have come. Just to stop, take stock and look back to see what we've done and how far we've come. Moreover, what we've learned. So the Progress Audit, here's step 1. Write the honest version of where you are. Not the LinkedIn version, not the highlight reel version, or something that you tell a recruiter. The actual honest account of where your reinvention is right now. What you've built, what's working, what's harder than you expected, what still feels like you're figuring it out. Write these ones down. If you can, write it in one paragraph and be specific and keep it truthful. Step 2, name the one thing that's working best. Just one thing, not 2, just one. It could be the income stream that's gaining momentum. It could be the format that's really landing and resonating with people and your audience. It could be that single relationship that's opened a particular door, or the skill that's really proving its value. What is that one thing that's working? Write it down, own it. The thing is, the mid-climb gets harder to navigate when you stop noticing these small things that are actually going well and that you're doing right. Step 3, name the one thing that you're still avoiding and trying to sidestep or procrastinating from. I did actually find myself procrastinating on creating this video. For some reason or other, I couldn't quite make it work, but I finally got around to it. So you could argue that me creating this video was that one thing that I was avoiding. Anyway, this is step 3. Name the one thing that you're still avoiding. And there's always one. The conversation that you haven't had, the content that you keep meaning to make. Yeah, alright, let's move on very quickly from this one. The rate that you haven't raised yet, the platform that you haven't shown up on consistently. Name it, write it down, and get after it. The thing that you're avoiding mid-climb is usually the next thing that needs to happen. Step 4 is to set a 30-day intention. What you don't want to do is boil the ocean. Don't make it 12 months, don't make it 24 months. Simply make it 30 days, because then you can break that down into nice, easy chunks that you can see the end of. Now, this isn't a strategy document. The point of the 30-day intention is to be specific about the thing that you'll do next in the next 30 days. Small enough to start today, but significant enough to matter today. Write it down, tell somebody, get somebody to hold you accountable. The mid-climb is where momentum is built and continues, or it gets lost. I want to say something to you if you're directly mid-climb right now. The beginning of this journey tends to get all the attention, the dramatic departure, the redundancy call, the moment you decide to start. It all makes for a really good story and a really good thumbnail. The end gets the attention too, the success story, the revenue milestone, the moment it all came together. The middle part though, the bit where you and I are right now, doesn't get a lot of attention at all. And I think for me that's a bit of a mistake, because the middle is where the actual work happens. The middle is where you find out who you actually are when no one's watching, and nothing is guaranteed either. The middle is where the character of the thing that you're building gets decided and gets galvanized. If you happen to be in the middle right now, if the direction is clear but the path is still a little bit uncertain, I really want you to hear this. I would absolutely say that you're not behind, that you're not failing, that you are not doing it wrong because it doesn't look like the highlight reel yet. You're mid-climb, and the mid-climb is exactly where you're supposed to be right now. Take a bit of time to stop and see how far you have travelled. I think you'll be surprised at yourself with how much that you've learned and lead into this new direction. Take a bit of time just to pause and consider it, and then get back to work. Keep going, but don't ever stop. Episode 8 is the last one in this series, and it's the one that I've been building towards since the first frame of episode 1 in the 51st chapter. Building something that lasts. The blueprint, the legacy question, if you will. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in episode 8. However, if this episode has resonated, please do share it with someone who's also mid-climb that maybe needs to take a little bit of time out to stop and see how far that they've travelled. I really do hope that this episode has been of value to you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time.